Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rock Room. One of my previous videos I did a show and tell on how to make a cab, and this week I figured let's try and make a heart. So we'll do the same thing we did the last time with the how-to video on how to make the cab, but this time we're going to take a little bit further and we're going to make a heart. So again, first of all, what we have to do is let's pick out the stone. So let's go pick out a stone we can make our heart with. Okay, and so with this heart, we're going to, rather than show you how to slab the piece, we're going to just get a piece that's already slabbed. And remember, the heart stone, or the stone for the heart, or slab for the heart, is always a thicker piece. So that's what we're looking for, something a little bit thicker. That's going to be something for our heart. Of course, this has got a rough edge on it, so we're not going to go there. So we're looking for something a little bit thicker. It doesn't have to be real big because the heart can't be real big. You know, we could do this. Let's do a piece of this. What this is yellow jacket jasper, and it has the jasper in it, and it's got hematite, or, you know, other people call ironstone. So you can kind of see that effect there. I'll get it wet here real quick. So this is what it looks like wet, or what it will look like polished, but I'll guarantee you it'll look a lot better than this when it's polished. So all that hematite, which is the darker colors, the black, which is now, will turn like shiny, like a chrome, like chrome on your bumper. Although they don't make chrome bumpers anymore. I'm from a different time, so yeah. So we'll use this beautiful piece of yellow jacket jasper, nice thick chunk, and we use this for our heart. So let me dry this off, and we'll draw the heart on there. Okay, so here's our slab, and of course, there's Sharpie. Not sponsored by Sharpie, but boy, Sharpie, Sharpie, Sharpie. So now I'm going to draw the heart on here, and I'm just going to draw it freehand, because hearts are probably the easiest thing to draw freehand. No, they're not. They're hard to draw freehand. So no, I'm not going to draw this freehand. I'm going to use the heart stencil, because if you do drawing, hearts are tough to draw freehand to make it come out even. So I'm going to use the stencil. So let's use the stencil. First of all, we have our slab, and we want to use the most of it. So why not make if we're getting this in there, we'll make the biggest heart we can out of it and try to find the best look to it. You know, it's got this nice spray on the bottom, yellow, but then it's got some red up on top. So to get both, you know, maybe I could put it in the middle like that. And then we're going to get a little bit with a little bit of licking coming across on the bottom there. That sound good? Let's draw this out with our Sharpie. Ooh. Okay, that's our first step. Let me zoom out a little bit here. So yeah, so that's our first step. Draw that on there. Kind of getting a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now we will take this over to the trim saw. And if anybody has one of these trim saws, always remember, if you're not going to completely dump out the water, at least dump the water out. You can see down the bottom where the the blade is not in the water, because these blades will rust, so you don't want to rust your blade. So just make sure you keep that blade out of the water when not in use. If you don't want, if you use this as much as I do dump it out a lot, scrub it up, and not scrub it because it's just plastic, so you don't want to really wreck it. But get up all the debris, because the rock dust will sort of collect underneath the bottom of the water. So just make sure you keep it dry when not in use. At least keep the blade dry. The rest is plastic, so it's no big deal for the plastic. So just keep everything off the metal parts, and it should be good to go. So I'll put a little bit of water, and when you add the water to this, you just want this blade edge just to be underwater. You don't need a lot of water. You're just trying to cool the cutting part of the blade. You put any more water in there, and it's just going to splash out and make a big, huge mess. Of course, our floors are always wet in the rock rooms, so from scrubbing stuff, you see soap and water. So so let's put some little water in here, and we'll cut out our shape of our heart. Okay, now here's our saw. I got it filled up with water, and everybody's wondering what the deal is with the saw. This is like everybody else's saw. It's just your regular saw, and what I did is I just got a piece of plexiglass, and I made these bends in it. And how you make these bends is that in it is you lay it flat on a table. You take a torch, don't touch it on the torch, but you hold it away until this gets soft enough, and then you can bend it. And again, I did the back, heated it up, got it to the point where I bend it, and then I kind of, did the shape of my saw here so it fits on there just like that. And then this towel is just an average towel that I throw over here like that. And the only reason that I did that is to keep the dust, or the spray I should say, from going everywhere, because these are pretty messy saws, and it's gonna spray out a lot anyhow. But this really reduces the amount of spray, and it won't kick stuff back into your face, because you'll be standing right here, so it can kick stuff back. That's why you'll see me a lot of times when I'll take my spray bottle. You won't see the spray bottle, because once the saw gets going, it'll make its own moisture. But you'll always see me wiping the front, and all I'm really doing is just cleaning off the spray that is on that plastic, so I can see through and see what I'm cutting. So let's go ahead and cut this this beautiful slab out, right? That should be good right there. Now, so I cut this out, roughed it out. Now, when I cut in this V part, you got to make really sure that you don't, because remember the blade, can you see the angle on the blade there? So what you see on the top, the bottom is cutting in further. So you don't want to cut too close to that edge in that crotch there, because that will cut too deep on the other side. So now we have this trimmed out. We can take it to the cab wheels and start cutting out or fine-tuning our shape. So here we are at the cabber. We'll put her on our first wheel right there, and we will rough out the shape. Get this light off here. Okay, now see, we roughed out our shape, and if you ever see me work the stone this way on the wheels, that is to make sure that this, oh, that's gonna leave a mark, that this is flat, you know, or square to each side. I don't know if you can see. Maybe you can see how this is a little bit higher than that. Not much. There you can kind of see a good angle there. So when I run this on the wheels this way, that's all I'm doing is making my edge flat. So now when we do this part in here, that's where we're going to be using the edges of the wheel to get in there. You're going to use the edge of the wheel. Now be very careful you don't go too deep and too hard in here with these fine or with these coarse wheels, because this area in here is going to be, you know, real tough to get at. So you don't want to leave any real bad gouges in there to try to clean up later. So we'll be using a lot of finesse when we're down inside there. So I'll show you what I mean as we go here. And as you can probably tell that, yeah, this iron stone is real messy. So now, see how I just went lightly in there, hardly any pressure to get in this little V in here, because I don't want to leave any real heavy marks. I just want real fine marks, or real light marks on here. So I'm gonna take this on the next wheel. Let me move this camera down a little bit. And all I'm gonna do is just lightly get this a little bit better before we draw our midline. So let me get that real quick. Okay, lights, right? Lights. So there we go. I got this a little bit better. That should be good for now. So now we're going to dry this off, and we're going to draw our midline on it. So let me show you what that does. So now rather than being a normal cab where we would draw our girdle line right down the bottom and dome the top, this is a heart. So we're going to be doming both sides. At least on this particular heart, which is going to be a two-sided heart, we're going to dome both sides. So now rather than make that line going across the bottom, I'm going to make that line right in the middle, or close to the middle. So again, hold your Sharpie in the spot and then move the stone. So I got such a glare coming in from the window here, I can't even see what I'm doing, so I'm just guessing or winging it here that I'm close to the middle, because again I can't see because of the glare coming in the window. So let's get out of that glare. Well, you know, good enough for a starting point. So now we're gonna go. Now we're gonna go back to our rough stone, and we're gonna start grinding out our bevels. But we're gonna do it on both sides. So let's start chomping away at it. See how I'm starting to put that first edge on there. And we'll just keep going till we get close to that center line. again, same as when you're doing a regular cab, as you see, when you keep rounding these edges over, don't worry about the flat spot. As you keep rounding your edges over and over and over, this flat spot in the middle will keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And you can also see when I'm up here in this groove here, I'm being real light, real careful. That will get rid of on the finer stones, because we don't want to dig this any deeper than what it already is. We're just going to try to smooth it out. So we'll just keep going at the edges, on the outside edges, and we'll work that that angle more and more and more until we're completely we lost our flat spot. And remember to always keep that stone moving. Okay, now you can see by rolling that and rolling it and rolling it, that flat spot in the middle is just about gone. So that's probably good enough. Now we will go on to the next wheel and get rid of all these scratches that this wheel has left behind. But our shape's looking pretty good. That's kind of right where we want to be at this step. Again, we don't want to go too hard into it with these abrasive stones, because we'll clean all that up when we get on the finer stones. It'll make it a little bit harder, but it'll be the trade-off will be worth it in the long run. So let's go on to the let's see if I get that light out of the way here. We'll go on to the next stone and we'll start grinding away. Okay, so that was all we really needed to do with that fine stone, is get rid of the scratches from the previous stone. And again, I didn't do too much on the bevel because we're going to get that on the 280. So now, and you can see my line, maybe you can't, my edge line is still there. I didn't go past the edge line. It's kind of hard to see there in the black, but that edge line is still in there for now because we don't want to change the shape. So we're going to go now to the 280. Move this down a little bit more. So now we're going to go on the 280, and now you can see that edge line better. So now we're going to go on the 280, and we're going to really work on this groove, and then fine tune the rest of it. And that's when she'll really start to show you what this yellow jacket jasper is like. Now when I do this bevel in here, again I'm going to use the edge of the wheel, and I'm not using this stone, but I'm going to use the edge of the wheel. I'm going to keep this at a real sharp angle like that, and then just use the edge of the wheel and go back and forth. Use both edges for both sides. This side, this side, this side, this side. And that's when I'm going to work on this bevel. Make sure that light is good. see she's really coming into shape now. I really worked on that inside edge there, tried to get this nice and smooth. And now we will move it on down to our next stone, and we'll start to polish this, although it's already started to look pretty nice, but let's polish it up. Alright, now we'll move it down to the next wheel. Alright, now put her on our final wheel. Okay, that was the final wheel. Now let's dry it off, and we'll take it over to the big shop light and take a close look at it. Alright, here's our finished heart. And I know it's difficult to film because of the chrome-like nature of this hematite. But if you can get at the right angle to see, there you go. You can see what that hematite looks like. Very impressive. And the other side, of course, the back side. Again, you can see that. Ooh, I can actually see a little scratch there. There's a spot I missed, right? That's why you dry it off in between each step and check. And that's even a little bit of, yeah, you won't be able to tell. But that's a little chalcedony there. You can see right through that. At least you can see right down into that. So yeah, there's your heart. And of course this is just taking up to 3,000 on the wheel. I didn't go any further than that. I could have buffed this out yet to make it any shinier, but to make it shinier than what it is right now, well, you wouldn't be able to see it because it would be just like that, complete reflection. So nice. Yeah, so that's our yellow jacket hematite heart. It's not real difficult to make. You can probably do, and if you can make a cab on a cab machine, you can make a heart on a cab machine. It's not that much harder. A little bit of work doing that little bevel in there in between the humps of the heart, but not overly complicated. Just use them edges of them wheels. That's how you can do a lot of different stuff with those edges of those wheels. So yeah, just remember, try something new. Get out there and try something new. So I hope you enjoyed this how-to video, and I'll try to do another one soon coming up. So thanks for watching. See you soon in a rock room near you.